Guten Tag, liebe Zuschauer. Herzlich willkommen zu unserem Film.
Hello viewers, and welcome to our film of A Year with Marklin. It was a year with many memorable events, many superb new models, and a dramatic canyon that gets at least a walking-on part at the end of our film. Let's start with the new models. To start our chronicle of the year's highlights, look carefully. Can you find the deliberate mistake we've built into this chapter? It's 70 years since a silver, violet and ivory racer set up new speed standards in intercity steam-hauled rail travel, the Henschel-Wegmann train. The locomotives came from Henschel, the carriages from Wegmann, both companies based in Kassel. According to the 1936 summer timetable, this 5-carriage high-speed train covered the 176 kilometers between Dresden and Berlin in only 95 minutes. The engine's top speed was 187 kilometers an hour. A year after its flying hamburger, Marklin has now commemorated the Henschel-Wegmann train as a model. Even in unfinished form, the streamlined 61001 engine looks just great.
Das ist immer die Angusstechnik, wie man ein Teil anbindet.
The molding technique has to ensure the best possible flow of material, or else you get surface flaws and air inclusions, potentially a big problem on every new model. The Henschel-Wegmann train, with its streamlined locomotive, officially described as sheet metal panelling, was an important Marklin model in 2005. Flying Hamburger and Henschel-Wegmann train were both stars of the German Reichsbahn in the 1930s. The engine's top speed was 187 kilometers an hour. It was restricted to 175 kilometers an hour in service, but allowed to run at this speed in either direction. It could accelerate from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in under 3 minutes. The violet and ivory color scheme was first applied to the Rheingold, later by the Flyers, and after 1935 by the Henschel-Wegmann train as well. So Marklin's 2005 model had to appear in its true colors, with success, as we can see. The new, largely hand-built Henschel engine had to pass a series of production quality checks. The motor is small and looks quite innocent in its raised position on the transmission. The power goes directly to the rearmost driven axle with no gear train losses. The special running gear with its controlled coupled axles is an ambitious design feature. The engine can negotiate tight curves down to a radius of 360 millimeters. This is the first series production model to use the new C sine wave motor, which has a lot of advantages. The new C sine wave motor is even smaller than the previous motor, but its performance has been boosted again, and it can be installed lengthwise in the boiler of steam locomotive models, a very useful feature. A click, a final screw tightened, and the streamliner is ready to start its journey. Unfortunately, this steam-powered forerunner of the ICE ceased to operate when World War II began. And our deliberate mistake, by the way. The Henschel-Wegmann train never ran on scheduled services to Hamburg. You've probably spotted it. Goods trains are always fascinating. The longer, the better. Remember counting the wagons when you were a kid? Goods trains are made up in marshalling yards. Let's look a bit closer at what happens. A goods train pulled by a Taurus is just arriving. The uncoupler separates the engine from the train, and it runs to the siding, where other engines are already waiting. Now the train has to be divided up into batches of wagons for different destinations, usually a task for a 290 diesel engine. This is a 4-axle bogie engine with hydrodynamic transmission, using various components from the V100. The first 17 were delivered to the DB in 1964. The new Marklin model is mostly made of metal and runs authentically at slow speeds thanks to the new compact C sine wave motor. The 290 weighs just under 80 tons and has a Mercedes motor and a Voigt transmission. Its top speed is about 80 kilometers an hour, or 46 in the shunting gear. The continuous power output is at least 1,000 horsepower. The new 290 is a model that Marklin fans have wanted for a long time. Here we can see how it collects the train and takes it to the hump. Since the marshalling yard is on a slight downward slope, there are pivoting buffers to stop the batches of wagons. The wagons are propelled slowly over the hump and separated at a hand-operated uncoupler, but the heavy wagons tend to run too fast. The real-life yard has retarders to slow the wagons down. The model has a do-it-yourself brake operated by a servo motor. It's fascinating to see how each wagon ends up in the siding intended for it. So many wagons, they all pass over the hump. Marshalling mostly takes place at night, hence the authentic lights on the model, with maintenance-free diodes. In the early morning, the marshalling yard is quite full up. All the departure tracks are occupied. That's Marklin railway modelling, fascinating and true to life. The 290 has finished its work, and gradually the trains it has made up leave the yard. To pull them, the Marklin program has a whole series of suitable engines.
Und jetzt gehen wir auf.
Now for a big journey. It doesn't have to be the Grand Canyon. Europe also has plenty of interesting destinations for Marklin fans.
Tolle Reiseziele für Marklin-Freunde.
In 2007, Europe's most famous mountain railway, the legendary Gotthard, will be 125 years old. One of its landmarks is the little church in Wassen, 250 years old, that passengers can see for several kilometers. But probably few of them know that the inside of the church is also well worth seeing. Most of the fans are busy watching out for the steady stream of express and goods trains rushing by. A very good reason for Marklin to offer its club members a trip to the Gotthard. The beast in Marklin's coat of arms, the green crocodile, naturally had to come along as well. Starting in 1920, the SBB bought several batches of crocodiles to haul heavy goods trains over the Gotthard line. Before tackling the Gotthard itself, there are two smaller obstacles to be overcome. But first of all, we greet the picturesque town of Rapperswil on Lake Zurich and its castle, more than 800 years old. A dam takes the railway across the lake between Rapperswil and Pfäffikon. The first steam train crossed it in 1878. Then comes the Southeast Line's very steep gradient, and soon after, our first photo stop. Club members are most impressed by the Crocodile BE683 with the number 13302. Many of them want to be photographed with it. It's good news that several of these engines have been saved to remind us of their former splendor at the head of special trains. It's great to be pulled by one of the big Swiss crocodiles. The model is marvelous too. I wish I had one at home. Now for a romantic scene with the crocodile. Surely every model railway fan's dream. I haven't had one for long. Back in 1951, my father and I would have loved to buy one, but we couldn't afford it then. It's always been the ultimate model railway icon. In Steineberg, we can see two myths, each about 1,900 meters high. But wait a moment, here comes a third myth. Not the biggest perhaps, but certainly one of the greatest. This church isn't in Wassen, but in Fluelen, on the Urner Lake, which is part of Lake Lucerne. Now we've switched engines, from the Crocodile to the even more powerful AE814, another classic of the Gotthard line. This locomotive was built to handle heavy goods trains without double heading, but of course each engine had to be controlled separately in those days. The assistant this time is an AE47, but for appearance reasons only, because almost 7,000 horsepower are more than enough for our train.
Also die A814 finde ich im Modell sehr schön.
The AE814 is a fine-looking model, and now we're seeing it live, and it's just amazing how it handles all this weight. You'd never notice normally. The AE814 could take 600-ton trains over the Gotthard at 60 kilometers an hour. Now, with its smaller sister, its task is to pull our special train through the attractive scenery of central Switzerland. These are journey impressions that won't fade. Our grandparents' engineering skills are always, or still, fascinating. And as the AE47 with its 4 motors shows us, they can still do the job. Now we're on the way to Bodio, where there is a visitors' information center describing the Gotthard Base Tunnel, a truly monumental project. 57 kilometers long, the Gotthard Base Tunnel is the key element in the new Alpine Transversal Line, or NEAT for short. The tunnel was budgeted to cost 6.5 billion Swiss francs. Current estimates have put this figure up to 8 billion, but even at this cost, it will pay off. The target is to reach Milan from Zurich in only 90 minutes, instead of the 4 hours and 10 minutes it takes at the moment. Shorter, faster and more comfortable. It will bring Europe closer together. In one of the training rooms, the material and personal transport processes are illustrated with the aid of a Marklin system. A gift to wish the tunnel builders luck, a genuine Marklin model. There's a control center for the trains, just like the real thing.
Contact
with the control center is by radio. How do I get a clear signal? Where am I on the construction site? Where should I go to pick up concrete or to dump spoil? This can all be practiced on the model, but of course not how to handle the actual locomotive. Into the tunnel workings. For safety reasons, our party wasn't able to go right in and see the drilling machinery, which is now about 8 kilometers from the tunnel mouth. But our camera team risked the journey on behalf of all our insiders. The tunnel will have twin bores. The first trial bores were begun in 1993, and work is now going ahead in Sedrun, Faido and Amsteg on the north side, as well as in Bodio. The longest construction lot is the one starting in Bodio, which is 16.6 kilometers long. The drilling machine progresses by about 20 meters every day, though the best daily result so far has been more than 30 meters. Satellite signals are to coordinate the relative positions of the tunnel sections. If difficult rock conditions are encountered, progress is slowed down and extensive safety measures are needed. Spoil is removed on conveyor belts and brought out by an industrial railway. Many of the tunnelers come from Germany or Austria. For example, shift leader Georg Wasserteurer. This is Gotthard rock, but not quite as firm here as we would like it. We stabilize it in various ways, with anchor bolts, arches, mesh and gun concrete. A giant air conditioning system lowers the temperature of 40 degrees Celsius in the working area to a more pleasant 25 degrees. The visitors are overwhelmed. For example, this gentleman from South Africa.
very nice. We've enjoyed it so far. I'm in the mining industry, so it was quite nice to see the Gotthard tunnel, and that was one of the reasons we came.
The tunnel won't be opened before 2014, which gives us plenty of time to sample the old route over the mountains and the unique beauty of the scenery it passes through.
Jetzt kommen wir zu einem großartigen Event.
Our next major event is the Model Railway meeting in Göppingen. As always, it attracted several thousand model railway fans from all over the world. Every 2 years, the hometown of the company founder, Theodor Friedrich Wilhelm Marklin, is transformed into the capital city of the model railway world. It's full steam ahead, often quite literally, for company staff and their guests. Martina Eckstein from the organising committee has to work flat out for many weeks before the event. This year, another large company from Göppingen took part in the model railway meeting for the first time, Leonhard Weiss, which exhibited its full-size track-laying machines at its own yards. Its staff first had to solve a number of logistical problems, but they have plenty of experience in doing just that.
Die Firma Weiss ist ein mittelständisches Unternehmen.
Leonhard Weiss established this medium-sized company back in 1900. Laying rail track is one of its main activities. Full-scale railway attractions fascinated the visitors just as much as the models on display. In and around Göppingen, railway history and the present day met up and had plenty of interesting things to show us. This special brew also had a keen following. Steam beer for the steam enthusiast. Helped by the fine weather, the mood was cheerful, and even a dose of culture never harmed a true railway fan. As well as tours of our factory, with all kinds of interesting things on display, the tours of the town we organised during the model railway meeting proved to be very popular. Göppingen has an interesting history and some fine buildings, and is well worth getting to know better. For instance, the building on Kirchstrasse where Marklin first started work in 1859. Later he went elsewhere, and the central homeopathic chemists moved in. Marklin's business flourished, and his private residence with its pool was also evidence of his success.
Bloß ist es leider den meisten Göppinger Bürgern gar nicht so bewusst.
Most of the people who live in Göppingen don't even know that Marklin began production on 4 sites in the town centre. With true artistic quality and an eye-catcher even today, these catalogue pictures date from the 1880s. At that time, the 2 Marklin brothers headed the company. Now, 130 years later, it's Paul Adams. Marklin has always been a fine advertisement for the town of Göppingen, situated at the foot of the Hohenstaufen. Today's mayor is fully aware of this. It's no secret that Marklin is still one of the companies that have spread the town's name throughout the world. When people say Göppingen, they often mean Marklin, though we also have the Frischauf, a highly successful handball team. Frischauf Göppingen, which plays in the National German Handball League, didn't have a home match on the weekend that we were there, but Marklin certainly did, and fielded their best teams in several different buildings. For instance, the old power station, which is now devoted to art and culture. On this weekend, the tension was electric. Auctioneer Lankus wielded the hammer with vigour and sold off many a rarity, including 10 model wagons signed by Paul Adams and Göppingen's Mayor Till. The proceeds went to charity. 140, 150, 160, 170. The money will be used to help children, young people or families in need. One of the initial ideas that may still be carried out was to make our site more suitable for children to play on. Remember Baron von Drais, inventor of an early type of bicycle? He also gave his name to the rail trolley, which was on the move all the time. So was this. Though Marklin's more recent flagship, the S36 from Nördlingen, doesn't move under its own steam at the moment, and its blue Marklin paint job has now been changed back to its previous forest green finish. There was magic in the air too, abracadabra, and an empty hall is transformed into a railway and model railway paradise. Like rabbits in a ditch, they'd better watch out, but since they're wearing yellow helmets, they should be safe enough. You can never be certain what might drip on you from above sometime or other. For many young people, Gauge 1 enthusiasm means sheer speed, as fast as possible. Some of the vehicles look tempting, but they often bear no resemblance to a railway engine. Not anymore. The High Speed World Championship is one of the traditions of the model railway meeting. The challengers are certainly fast and look good, but sometimes they deviate just a bit from the chosen path. The Hohenstaufen Hall in Göppingen is where it's all happening. Some people are looking for wheels or turning them, others want advice, or all three, with soldering iron, flux and wire. Don't worry, we haven't changed the hall or the program. Even dolls have a proud place at the model railway meeting. For many years, Marklin used to make doll's house accessories. 2005 was the date for a meeting between Marklin's Railways and Kette Cruiser Dolls. Would you believe it? Marklin's baby has taken a fancy to a doll. Now for Henschel, not forgetting Wegmann. It's 70 years since this famous train was built to Gauge O in Göppingen. By hand, as a one-off, unfortunately. By the way, Marklin likes to hold hands with its club members and makes sure they don't go away empty-handed. This year's insider present was a bottle opener with steam sound effect. The cutout sheets for the younger fans and the plastic dishes for the older ones were another clever idea. For every generation and every visitor, the sky was full of steam clouds in and around Göppingen. 5 giants of steam paid the town of the Staufers a visit. 64-419 steamed in from Hohenlohe and 75-1118 from Amstetten. O1066 steamed in from the Bavarian Railway Museum in Nördlingen. Bubikopf, the 64, looks good and sounds healthy too. A Prussian P8, back in Württemberg after a spell in Romania, pulls carriages from the GDR's Reichsbahn, banked by a German crocodile. Enthusiasm knows no boundaries. We don't intend to leave any of the steam engines out. If you're an addict, why fight it? You could say that the virus has been aroused. It was dormant for a long time in my case, but now it's active and raring to go. That's how it is with viruses. Suddenly they're everywhere, especially the steam virus. That's highly infectious and quite incurable, which is no great problem because it's also very benign. We swathed the hills of the Swabian Alb in steam, and even twanged the heartstrings of visitors from the motherland of steam, no less.
I enjoyed the auction. That was very interesting because I come from England and we never see these wonderful Marklin products in England. Very, very rare.
Railways exert their charm on everyone, and steam trains most of all. But there are other vehicles too that take you down memory lane. The rail bus, for instance. It was ready and waiting when Germany's economic miracle began. There used to be a line from Reutlingen up to Liechtenstein. In the winter we'd ride up there with our skis. A pity that they closed the line. It was a very interesting run. Let's just call it progress. Now for the preparations for a rather special race. Hare versus tortoise, but in this case the hare is a fully fledged racing car and the tortoise a highly tuned model.
Nur das Nötigste, das was man wirklich braucht und das.
Only the bare necessities, but everything has to hold together for the first 25 meters. After that, it's not so important. 25 meters in 3.5 seconds. The hare strains every muscle but has no chance. It's all over so quickly that you need a rerun to see what happened. But the winner is the tortoise every time. The whole event was a winner too.
Ja gut, Fazit ist eindeutig, dass das ein großartiger Erfolg war, die ganze Veranstaltung.
The verdict is obvious. The whole event was a great success. We had several new products on show for the first time, and it looks as if the visitors liked them a lot. Clear, precise, informative. What more could you wish for? The 2 days went past in a flash, and the guests are already making their way home. Some of them can manage alone, others need a little support. Everyone is looking forward to 2007, when Göppingen becomes model train city again, and the whole region around the Hohenstaufen disappears into a cloud of steam.
Das Eisenbahnhobby, liebe Zuschauer, ist
Railways are a hobby full of variety, with lots of opportunities for experiencing something new. Don't you agree? This is especially true of the Marklin world in 2005, a year full of interest. Here are some brief reports on the highlights. A sincere welcome on the parking lot in front of the Marklin Museum for visitors from the land of the rising sun. Roland Gaugeler, Marklin's press office and museum manager, shows visitors from Asia some of the highlights from Marklin's history that can now be seen again in the museum. We shall come back to the newly reopened museum later. Our Far Eastern guests are also interested in our production facilities. They are a Japanese film crew exploring classic German arts and crafts for a private TV station. Marklin is an essential port of call. Every stage in production was not only closely examined, but also captured on film immediately. Marklin is one of the better-known German companies in Japan too, hence this keen interest. Japanese visitors in a South German company watching an American model locomotive being built. It's unlikely, but it's true. The Japanese don't speak the local Swabian dialect, but quality is an international language. The Japanese media professionals were most impressed by Marklin's hospitality and the way it lets visitors look closely at its products and methods. Marklin can call upon in-depth metalworking know-how and craft methods that the Japanese still value very highly. This earned the company the highest praise, as the subtitles hopefully convey.
これはね、今は何でも機械でガタンガタンガタンボカンボンってできてしまうけれども、手作りってちっちゃくやっていくっていうことはね、もうこれも芸術だし、ね、そういうのをね大事にする心っていうのはね、この日本にもあるし、やっぱりドイツにもあるなと思いました。というのはね、日本ではね、800万の神様がいますけれども、一番偉い神様は女神様、女の神様なの。その神様はね、トコトントコトントコトンとね、切れを折ってたんですよ。だから日本ではね、働く手仕事っていうのは尊敬されます。で天皇陛下もね、毎年お米植えてるのよ。秋にはお米買ってますよ。
They toured the production lines, expressed their surprise and filmed unceasingly, often with 2 cameras. Calcutta's on the Ganges, Paris is on the Seine, but if I'm so in love, it's due to Madeleine. Vico Torriani sang this at least 45 years ago. Well, Paris is still on the Seine and still claims to be the city of love. If Paris had already had a Marklin branch office in those days, Vico might have brought Madeleine along to admire the product. Who knows?
Un abonnement, Marklin magazine en français, jusqu'à nouvel ordre, mais comme ils n'ont pas mis de prix.
Marklin France is well laid out, with numerous awards on the walls, not without good reason.
Hauptsache, wir bringen eine schnelle und
We concentrate on giving our customers and product users a fast service with interesting features. We also have a technical and repair department for work under guarantee. There aren't many items in stock here because the products aren't delivered from Paris.
Also ein Händler bestellt etwas, ich nehme.
I take the dealer's order, but my colleague in Germany arranges for delivery.
In Deutschland können diese Bestellungen liefern.
The goods are sent directly to the dealer and don't pass through our branch at all. This model railway shop, with its entrance modelled on the Paris metro, stocks everything the French enthusiast in particular could desire. As the old song tells us, Paris is the city of love, and that includes a love of model railways.
par définition, le client Marklin.
Marklin customers are extremely loyal. You could almost say that they're addicted to Marklin.
Souvent, ils sont, comme on dit, drogués à Marklin.
From the Arc de Triomphe, it's less than 5 kilometers to where the International Model Railway Exhibition is held every year for a week in April. And like most exhibitions all over the world, there are crowds of visitors, and the market leader's stand is the center of attention.
Vous avez vu que derrière nous avons mis un wagon, vapeur.
It's the same all over. Everybody loves these miniature trains. He likes his electric railway a lot. He really does. It was always one of my favorite toys. But it's not just for playing with, it's reality in miniature. Yes, exactly. I've kept the trains I used to play with as a child, and now I've bought a new transformer. It's still fun. You could call this second childhood, but why not just speak of the hobby that makes him happy? The climax of our visit was the Model of the Year award by the French magazine Le Train. Once again, the winner was Marklin. Now for a jump to May the 25th, 2005. A great day for the Marklin Museum, the day it was born again. The stolen tin plate models are back where they belong and can be displayed again proudly to the media before the museum opens its doors again to the public. General Manager Paul Adams, Museum Curator Roland Gaugeler and Financial Director Karl-Heinz Menrath are relieved that everything went so well. Marklin's soul is back home again. And here it is, our Storkenbein, the original stork's leg engine, safe and sound. Admittedly, it's as scratched as if a real stork had bitten it, but the main thing is, it's back on display where it used to be. And so are almost all the other models that were stolen so dramatically. All wounds heal with time, or with the help of the restorers. Anyway, today's headline is obvious. Marklin's treasures are back in their museum. Public enthusiasm and media interest were tremendous. A happy end that sent forth a positive message. There was a culinary surprise too. These are Landjägers, literally rural hunters. They came from Austria and their real-life counterparts brought these magnificent exhibits back to us. Theirs is a successful name in two senses. The way the thieves treated our priceless tin plate relics, however, was less appetizing.
Wir haben zwar
Admittedly, all, or almost all, of the stolen items were located and recovered, but some of them were badly damaged.
Sind einige Exponate doch schwer beschädigt.
Wir müssen die Geschichte erhalten der Exponate.
We want the exhibits to tell their story, but of course we also want to repair the damage. We must look for a practicable solution and restore at least some of them to their original fine condition. The stolen property is back with its rightful owners. The Landjäger did a grand job, and now we're entitled to relax and tuck into our food. But it's time now for our next voyage of discovery. We're looking for the legendary continent of Atlantis. And we don't have to look far. Children and young people from Duisburg, most of them members of the first FC Marklin club, have created it for us. With their enthusiasm and sense of fun, they have brought Atlantis to life by gluing, sawing, planing, painting, and letting their imagination run free. What other people throw away, they have built into this fantastic world. Of course, the tunnels have to be high enough for the trains to pass through. That's fairly obvious. But what's really new and different is that the kids are encouraged to build a landscape that's entirely their own. It may not always look like the real thing, but it's full of ideas, and creating it was a lot of fun. It's conjured up, crooked, complex, curlicued, crazy, and cantastic. I just built it that way, the bridge. Don't you think it looks cool? This is a river and a lake with bushes. These are 4 different fields. And now I'm going to build a house here on the other side. Before long, everyone is back at ground level, and Atlantis lives. A fantasy continent, but with its own trains, which even managed to work quite well after all this excitement. Later in the year, there was a big model railway show at the Stuttgart Exhibition Centre, with one hall turned into a giant playhouse, the Villa Kinderbund. A clear invitation, a call for help maybe, although it's expressed in a small voice, "Dad, come and play with me." Sometimes it's only a small step from choo-choo, the train's coming, to complete electronic control. And it's always amazing to see how quickly children learn and how enthusiastic they are. It's also nice to see how the tables are turned sometimes. This is really just a friendly invitation to spend more time together. If you ask me, Marklin had a splendid idea here. Model railways are a wonderful hobby to indulge in together. The aim is for fathers to devote more time to their kids and to spend the time in a worthwhile way. A model railway layout is the perfect answer for both of them. With the new Marklin systems, 2 people can operate the layout together. 2 mobile stations can be connected to it. And father and son, or daughter, can run the trains as a team. Father is under house arrest. He and the kids are forbidden to watch TV. If you make the effort, there's always time to play together. It seems like only yesterday when this rail car made a triumphal journey through southern Germany with the heroes of Bern on board, the German team that won the 1954 World Cup. More than half a century has passed, but Marklin hasn't forgotten those great days. Its 1:87 scale Z gauge model is only for insiders. It was premiered at the IMA in Munich. For the grown-ups, Marklin Systems is the ultimate. But for the younger train fans, another name is more important: Thomas the Tank Engine. Look how he pulls.
Die Stände sind voll.
Every stand is full, with never an empty place for painting, and all the trains on the move. That's how the kids like it. Young and old are equally delighted. German Rail is pleased as well. Support is on its way after the terrible fire in Nuremberg. When we heard about the fire, we decided to help by building a model of the legendary Adler and donating €50 from the selling price toward rebuilding this famous train, that's so symbolic of the early days of rail in Germany. Now from the Adler back to the VT-08, another of the DB's gallant workhorses. The model pulls just as lustily as its full-scale counterpart. What we insiders get is genuinely interesting. If you ask me, it's a very successful model, and to ride in the original makes it even more interesting. Now that I've seen it, I'll certainly buy it. Runs like this make the whole thing come alive. I like it a lot, the speed and the comfortable seats. Super, just what I've been waiting for. A very distinguished product, the World Champions train. In any scale. When there's snow on the fir trees and the Marklin Museum is shining forth like the smiles on the visitors' faces, then the great moment has come. Presentation of the 2005 museum model. What could be more appropriate than to raise one's glass to this wagon from the Kaiser Brewery in Geislingen, now available in 3 different scales. The chief executive is obviously enjoying both, Kaiser beer and the Marklin model. When I'm asked, I say, Marklin always has something new up its sleeve. Whether it's a carriage, a wagon or an engine, I have my wish list, and I look forward as much as anyone to unwrapping the latest product. The new C-rails, for instance, they're ideal for playing trains on the carpet. Now for a surprising change of mood, from building a model railway to dismantling the museum.
This
is a fine museum, but it's too new to have much of a link with the past. So we've decided to move the museum, and of course the vehicles, to the historic buildings that are more suitable for illustrating the company's history. The new museum will be one of the topics in next year's annual chronicle, just like the next museum model. And the next winter. There are some splendid new items in part 2 of our new product survey as well. Only this crazy vehicle is missing. A pity, but with so many new products competing for attention, something simply has to be left out. Let's run a finger down our electronic menu card and start with the new central station. Maybe we can cast some light on the black magic of bits and bytes that makes it work. The central station can do an awful lot, and Marklin even runs systems seminars so that all its capabilities can be fully utilized. In a friendly group and with expert guidance from Rüdiger Haller, Marklin people learn how to get the best out of this high-tech product. With this know-how, it will be easy to match the performance of their favorite model trains to the home layout. The ideal top speed and rates of acceleration and braking can now be accurately selected. Nobody need worry that systems is too complex for them. Remember the old saying, it's never too early and seldom too late. It's brought fresh life to my layout. The new facilities it offers are very interesting. It keeps me young and interested so that my hobby is still a whole lot of fun. I'm glad I came. I met some interesting people for the first time and learned about the technical advances our hobby is making. Mobile station and central station are a fascinating guarantee of this. Do you remember, last year the 01 in Gauge 1 was the big star. A fabulous model, almost impossible to distinguish from the real thing. Preparing this pedigree express engine in the sheds is a real pleasure. Admittedly, it doesn't take on real water, but a load of real coal makes it look even more authentic. Have you still got some of that coal to spare? Then save it up for the Gauge 1 sensation of 2005. It's a jumbo. Its full name, or rather its number, is 44333. 333 commemorates Alexander's victory over the Persians, in case you've forgotten. Let's enjoy some steam train atmosphere. The engine gleams and sparkles and has some equally brilliant special features: smoke, running gear lights, running noise and a telex tender coupling. The whistle is also digitally controlled. It's many years since steam locomotives pulled our trains, but the fascination lives on. Museum railways preserve them in reality, and Marklin performs the same task in miniature. In the largest model category, Gauge 1, the illusion is almost perfect. Once upon a time, America was the railway fans' paradise. But some American cult locomotives still ride the rails for Marklin, the most recent model being the GG1, which has a cult status equal to the Swiss crocodile it resembles. The Pennsylvania Railroad's iconic engine, the GG1, one of the fascinating creations from the pen of American star designer Raymond Loewy. It first took to the rails in 1935 and was the most powerful electric locomotive on the American continent. A pity that none of these engines has survived in workable form. Of the 16 that were not scrapped, this one, GG1 4935, is in the best condition. It can be seen at the Rail Museum in Strasburg, Pennsylvania.
Well, the GG1 is a very important vehicle in our collection. It represents the iconic electric locomotive that was used on the Pennsylvania Railroad.
The history of the Pennsylvania Railroad began in the first half of the 19th century, with a rapidly expanding rail network and engines such as John Bull, now the oldest steam engine still in working order in the USA. For a whole century, the land of unlimited opportunity was railway land #1, and the Pennsy was for much of this time the world's largest railway company. At first, steam engines hauled passengers and goods on the journey from the Atlantic to the Pacific and brought them back safely. In 1935, a new era began. The Pennsy electrified many of its main routes, and the new engines, notably the GG1, gave steam a run for its money. As a model, our GG1 doesn't have to compete in this way, and in any case, it's in a class by itself for looks. The real-life GG1 is over 24 meters long and weighs about 216 tons, an impressive piece of work. As you can easily see on the Marklin model, there are 2 leading axles followed by 3 driven axles, or 2C, according to modern numbering. The Penzi used the letter G for engines with this layout. Twice 2C was therefore GG, followed by a 1, since this was the first series. The body was carried on 2 large cast steel frames and was for the first time welded, not riveted, a brilliant idea from designer Raymond Loewy. Our model is a zinc-based die casting, painted in the Pennsylvania Railroad's very dark green. At the time, critics spoke of a big bucket of black paint with 1 drop of green added. A big challenge for us was to apply the 5 narrow decor lines under the windows and around the whole body. But you can see how well this has succeeded from the pictures. Marklin staff are accustomed to challenges of this kind. Their Swabian inventiveness is backed by the latest tampon printing machines. To get round the end of the body and have the lines overlap at the proper place, we had to position the part at an angle and make up a tampon that could do the overlap and the round section at the front and still match up with the lines along the sides. Of the 6 main axles, 4 are driven on the model. They are mounted in 2 bogies, with another 2 for the leading and trailing wheels. As you can see from the pictures, a lot of the production work has to be done by hand. With about 4,700 horsepower on tap, the GG1 was a powerful engine and looked the part as well. The model gets plenty of power down onto the rails as well, thanks to its unusual drive line. A special feature of this engine is that it's our first American model of this size to have a central motor and shaft drive to both bogies, which naturally gives it terrific traction. The controlled high-performance motor is installed centrally. An MFX decoder supplies plenty of authentic sound. On the original GG1, each axle is driven by 2 288 kilowatt electric motors. The chief engineer is installed in the correct position, then comes the printed circuit board and finally the body. These are unique pictures of the actual GG1 being built. The Pennsylvania Railroad knew how important its most powerful engine was and kept a full record of its construction. The Marklin GG1 gets the same careful treatment, with a pictorial record of each production stage. The lighting functions and the acceleration and braking rates can be adjusted digitally. The special functions are easy to call up with the mobile station or central station. Altogether, the GG1 had 10 different color schemes. Here it is in the little black dress of the Penn Central. The locomotive plant in Altoona, Pennsylvania turned out 139 GG1s between 1935 and 1943. For almost 50 years, they were the backbone of fast passenger traffic between New York, Harrisburg and Washington. The locomotives were geared for a top speed of 100 miles an hour, equivalent to 160 kilometers an hour. The last GG1 was pensioned off in 1983, but it lives on, not only in the museum but also in people's memories, especially the engineers who used to drive it and always had a high opinion of it.
No, it wasn't a job. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I even enjoyed the steam engine. We had a great time. Well, the GG1's different from all of them. Used to run like a Pullman car. You just float up and down, really nice. Couldn't beat it. Best job in the world.
That situation could have changed abruptly after January the 15th, 1953, when the brakes of the Federal Express failed as it entered Union Station in Washington. The engine and the first 2 carriages plunged across the concourse, through the station and into the baggage area. John was on the engine when this happened.
Well, this is the only reason why we're alive. when she hit the bumping block, we were going about 30, I guess, at that time. It just wiped everything out right through, and if the floor wouldn't have went down, we'd have been in the station. And in the station, right in behind the door, the people were jammed. So it was a good thing we went down like we did.
The GG1 is a unique design. This is just as true of the 2005 model as of the 70-year-old original.
Von der GG1 nun zu der amerikanischen Dampflok.
From the GG1 to the ultimate American steam locomotive, the Big Boy. All Marklin enthusiasts will know it, but as a special treat, Marklin offered its insiders a journey right across the USA, with an opportunity to see all 8 Big Boys. Here it is, the Big Boy, the world's biggest steam locomotive. A wonderful sight and a legend, as the real thing and as a model. 35 insiders followed the Big Boy trail and visited the few remaining examples, which are distributed all over America. A memorable journey, including other railroad highlights as well. The starting point was in Scranton, 2 hours by car from New York. American railroad history lives on at the Steamtown National Historic Site. Scranton was one of the main stations on the Delaware, Lackawanna and Western Railroad. And here it comes, Big Boy 4012. Of course, we're on the move and the Big Boy's standing still, but it doesn't take much effort to imagine it the other way around. Open up, the fire is drawing, so off we go, ready for work. This insider is in his element, but he's not the only one. All of them are. The Big Boy era is coming back to life. The next visit is to the National Railroad Museum in Green Bay, Wisconsin, where Big Boy 4017 has found a home in distinguished company. Right alongside is a GG1, number 4890, finished in brown. These 2 engines are the pride and joy of the museum in Green Bay.
For that time, this was state-of-the-art, and you look at that monstrosity of a collection of steel and tubing and whatnot, and you wonder how could it work?
How they worked, young man, like the giants they were. Now we've left the Great Lakes and made a big jump to the mighty Mississippi River, to the city of St. Louis, with its steel arch symbolizing the gateway to the Wild West. The former Union Station still catches the eye. Here we are in the Museum of Transportation, where there are more heroes of past railroad history to be seen, including, of course, our 3rd Big Boy, number 4006. The Big Boy is simply gigantic, over 40 meters long and weighing almost 550 tons. A short breather before the journey continues from St. Louis in Missouri via Kansas to Texas. We cut this stage of the journey short and boarded the California Zephyr again when it arrived in Dallas. Every day, only one non-local pair of trains reaches Union Station now. The California Zephyr from Los Angeles and the train in the opposite direction from Chicago, on this occasion with our group on board. The most important call we have to make in Dallas is the Age of Steam Railroad Museum, with several treasures from the Santa Fe, the Union Pacific and other railroad companies that operated in the southwest of America. Big Boy 4018 is rusting slightly and doesn't look as splendid as its colleagues in St. Louis or Green Bay, but it still creates the same powerful effect. It's awe-inspiring. When you stand in front of it, you can hardly imagine it taking to the rails. Now we've reached the Pacific and the western part of our tour. We travelled by train, but the baggage claim reminds you of an airport. Yet this really is Union Station in Los Angeles, built in 1939 in Spanish style. It's considered the last of America's great rail stations. Our museum visit here takes us to the Los Angeles County Fairplex in Panoma, where there is a transport collection directly alongside a fairground. Smile, please. She smiled, and so does he, and rings his bell. Big Boy 4014. He can be persuaded to make other sounds too, just for her sake. A last look into the firebox, and then we're off to where quite different flames of passion burn. Hollywood, the dream factory. A tour of Universal Studios, and Marklin's insiders get a close-up view of how disaster films are made. Earthquakes, explosions, and high tides. Cuddly fish are all part of the deal. Back to Union Station for our group, fortunately with no disasters on the way. The Super Chief is waiting to haul us towards the Rocky Mountains. It will be our mobile home for a day and a rather short night, with a splendid selection of food and drink to keep us happy. When the sun is up, so are we, and ready to board the museum train. From Williams, it takes just under 3 hours to reach one of the United States' greatest natural wonders, the Grand Canyon. In millions of years, the Colorado River has hollowed out its bed in this unbelievable way. Millions of visitors come to see it every year, quite a few of them on the Grand Canyon Railway. That was an eventful day. The night is all too short, and by the next morning we're in New Mexico. We stop briefly in Albuquerque, buy a few Red Indian mementos, and before long the Streamliner is on the move again. Now comes a succession of climaxes. Chama is where the Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad starts. It puffs its way up to the Cumbres Pass, 3,053 meters above sea level. What a magnificent late summer day, with the leaves already taking on a tinge of autumn. Magical moments. It's just splendid. Wonderful weather and the autumn colors everywhere, an unforgettable experience. This line has always kept its original character. It's as if it were 1905 and one were back in the Wild West. This steam train is the oldest museum railroad in the USA. It starts in Durango, is 72 kilometers long, and runs up through the rocky valley of the River Animas to Silverton, which is 2,800 meters above sea level. The line was built in 1900 when gold was discovered in this region. Today, Silverton slumbers quietly and only comes to life for 2.5 hours every day in summer when the train arrives. Denver, the capital of Colorado, is 8 hours away by bus. We're heading for the Forney Museum of Transportation. The museum shop has a most impressive selection of items on sale. The collection in the big hall includes road vehicles, highly polished veteran cars, but the rail vehicles put on a good show as well. This is where Big Boy 4005 has found its final home. It's been placed at one side so that its sheer size and beauty can be captured on film, but it always attracts a crowd, just like the 5 big boys we've already seen. You often hear visitors regretting that they never rode the US rail system in earlier years. 10 or 20 years would have been about right. A shame, but the chance is gone forever. The main thing is that we've seen some of these engines and can at least imagine how they used to go. Silver Plume Station, west of Denver, is where the celebrated Georgetown Loop starts. It was built in 1884 between Georgetown and the silver mines in the mountains of Colorado. This is the most famous scene on this line, the train on Devil's Gate Viaduct. Within 3 kilometers, the line has to climb more than 200 meters higher. The only answer was to build the Georgetown Loop. In 1930, the line closed, but half a century later, people remembered this historic line and rebuilt it. Georgetown is a typical Wild West township in the kind of picturesque scenery we know from dozens of movies. Just a final look at the magnificent scenery of the Rocky Mountains, a memory to take home with us. And then it's off to the next destination, which has a well-known name, Cheyenne, Wyoming, Union Station. The big boys often started their journeys from here, though only a few remnants of the vast loco shed have survived. And a big boy too. It's number 4004. Seems to be in good condition and has been set up in a holiday park in Cheyenne, protected by a small wire mesh fence, the ideal backdrop for an insider group photo. As dusk falls, the insiders enjoy the railroad atmosphere in Cheyenne. The sun has long since set when the Challenger steams into view, the big boy's smaller brother. Our final destination is Omaha, Nebraska. The 8th and last big boy, number 4023, is waiting for us here. Together with diesel engine 6900, it's about to be moved to a new site in a park. The ground is rather swampy, but it doesn't stop us from getting closer to this ever-young relic of the past. Omaha's imposing Union Station is now a museum, and there we pause a while and look back on a magnificent tour that all the participants found absolutely fascinating. I'll be taking some memorable pictures back home with me. It certainly makes a difference when you see a big boy in real life, and you can even touch it. Just fantastic. I'd say this was one of the highlights of my whole life. Big Boy makes it all come true. Children, the young in heart, are carried away by this masterpiece of locomotive design. It exerts a fascination that will never die. That was our film, A Year with Marklin. It was a full steam ahead year, and it looks as if the current year will be the same. Thank you for your interest. I look forward to seeing you again in a year's time. Until then, goodbye and all the best.